You're listening to Midwest Coven Cast presents Weekend Reads. I'm Marilyn of Midwest Coven Cast, and each week I will be reading to you, dear listeners, occult works that are in the public domain. All of this I do with the goal of helping each of us grow in our knowledge and practices. Here in Season 1, we will be making our way through Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy or magic, published in 1531. I hope you enjoy this week's installment. Chapter 72 of the Wonderful Power of Enchantments. They say that the power of enchantments and verses is so great that it is believed they are able to subvert almost all nature. Apuleius saith that with a magical whispering, swift rivers are turned back. The slow sea is bound, the winds are breathed out with one accord. The sun is stopped, the moon is clarified, the stars are pulled out, the day is kept back, the night is prolonged, and of these things Lucan writes. The courses of all things did cease the night, prolonged was, 'twas long before 'twas light. Astonied was the headlong world, all this was by the hearing of a verse. And a little before, the Salian verse did into his heart so flow, that it did make a greater heat of love. And elsewhere, no dregs of poison being by him drunk, his wits decayed enchanted. Also Virgil in Damon. Charms can command the moon down from the sky. Circe's charms chained Ulysses' company. A cold snake being charmed burst. And Ovid in his untitled book saith, with charms doth withering Ceres die, dried are the fountains all, acorns from oaks, enchanted grapes, and apples from trees fall. If these things were not true, there would not be such strict penal statutes made against them that should enchant fruit. And Tibullus saith of a certain enchantress, her with charms drawing stars from heaven, aye, and turning the course of rivers did espy. She parts the earth, and ghosts from sepulchres draws up, and fetcheth bones away from the fires, and at her pleasure scatters clouds in the air, and makes it snow in summer, hot and fair. Of all which that enchantress seems to boast herself in Ovid, when she saith, at will I make swift streams retire to their fountains whilst their banks admire. Sea toss and smooth, clear clouds with clouds deform. With spells and charms I break the viper's jaw, cleave solid rocks, oaks from their seizures draw. Whole woods remove, the lofty mountains shake, earth for to groan and ghosts from graves awake. And thee, O moon, I draw. Moreover, all poets sing, and philosophers do not deny, that by verses many wonderful things may be done, as corn to be removed, lightnings to be commanded, diseases to be cured, and the like. For Cato himself, in country affairs, used some enchantments against the diseases of beasts, which as yet are extant in his writings. Also, Josephus testifies that Solomon was skilled in those kinds of enchantments. Also, Celsus Africanus reports, according to the Egyptian doctrine, that man's body, according to the number of the faces of the zodiac signs, was taken care of by so many, viz., 36 spirits, whereof each undertake and defend their proper part, whose names they call with a peculiar voice, which being called upon, restore to health, with their enchantments, the diseased parts of the body. Chapter 73 of the Virtue of Writing and of Making Imprecations and Inscriptions. The use of words and speech is to express the inwards of the mind, and from thence to draw forth the secrets of the thoughts, and to declare the will of the speaker. Now, writing is the last expression of the mind, and is the number of speech and voice, as also the collection, state, end, continuing, and iteration, making a habit which is not perfected with the act of one's voice. And whatsoever is in the mind, in voice, in word, in operation, and in speech, the whole and all of this is in writing also. And as nothing which is conceived in the mind is not expressed by the voice, so nothing which is expressed is not also written. And therefore magicians command that in every work there be imprecations and inscriptions made, by which the operator may express his affection, that if he gather an herb or a stone, he declare for what use he doth it. If he make a picture, he say and write to what end he maketh it, with imprecations and inscriptions. Albertus also, in his book called the Speculum, doth not disallow this, without which all our works would never be brought into effect, seeing a disposition does not cause an effect, but the act of the disposition. We find also that the same kind of precepts was in use amongst the ancients, as Virgil testifies when he sings, I walk around, first with these threads, in number which 3 are, bout the altars thrice I shall thy image bear. And a little after, knots, a marrowless tie of colours 3, then say, these bonds I knit for Venus be. And in the same place, as with one fire this clay doth harder prove, the wax more soft, so Daphnis with our love. Chapter 74. Of the proportion, correspondency, and reduction of letters to the celestial signs and planets, according to various tongues, and a table thereof. God gave to man a mind and speech, which, as saith Mercurius Trismegistus, are thought to be a gift of the same virtue, power, and immortality. The omnipotent God hath by his providence divided the speech of men into diverse languages, which languages have, according to their diversity, received diverse and proper characters of writing, consisting in their certain order, number, and figure, not so disposed and formed by hap or chance, nor by the weak judgment of man, but from above, whereby they agree with the celestial and divine bodies and virtues. But before all notes of languages, the writing of the Hebrews is, of all, the most sacred in the figures of characters, points of vowels, and tops of accents, or consisting in matter, form, and spirit. The position of the stars being first made in the seat of God, which is heaven, after the figure of them, as the masters of the Hebrews testify, are most fully formed the letters of the celestial mysteries, as by their figure, form, and signification, so by the numbers signified by them, and also by the various harmonies of their conjunction. Whence the more curious mecubles of the Hebrews do undertake, by the figure of their letters, the forms of characters, and their signature, simpleness or composition, separation, crookedness or directness, defect, abounding, greatness or littleness, crowning, opening or shutting, order, transmutation, joining together, revolution of letters, and of points, and tops, by the supputation of numbers, and by the letters of things signified, to explain all things, how they proceed from the first cause, and are again to be reduced into the same. Moreover, they divide the letters of their Hebrew alphabet, viz., into 12 simple, 7 double, and 3 mothers, which they say signify as characters of things, the 12 signs, 7 planets, and 3 elements, viz., fire, water, and earth. For they account air as no element, but as the glue and spirit of the elements. To these also they appoint points and tops. As therefore by the aspects of planets and signs, together with the elements, the working spirit and truth, all things have been and are brought forth. So, by these characters of letters and points, signifying those things that are brought forth, the names of all things are appointed as certain signs and vehicles of things explained, carrying with them everywhere their essence and virtues. The profound meanings and signs are inherent in those characters and figures of them, as also numbers, place, order, and revolution, so that Origenes, therefore, thought that those names, when translated into another idiom, do not retain their proper virtue, For only the original names, which are rightly imposed because they signify naturally and have natural activity. It is not so with them which signify at pleasure, which have no activity, as they are signifying, as they are but certain natural things in themselves. Now, if there be any language whose words have a natural signification, it is manifest that this is the Hebrew, the order of which he that shall profoundly and radically observe, and shall know to resolve proportionally the letters thereof, shall have a rule exactly to find out any idiom. There are, therefore, 22 letters, which are the foundation of the world, and of creatures that are and are named in it, and every saying and every creature are of them, and by their revolutions receive their name, being, and virtue. He, therefore, that will find them out, must by each joining together of the letters so long examine them until the voice of God is manifest, and the framing of the most sacred letters be opened and discovered. For hence voices and words have efficacy in magical works, because that in which nature first exerciseth magical efficacy is the voice of God. But these are of more deep speculation than to be handled in this book. To return to the division of the letters of these amongst the Hebrews are 3 mothers, viz., Aleph, Mem, and Shin. 7 double, viz., Bet, Yamel, Daled, Kaf, Pe, Resh, and Tav. The other 12, viz., He, Vav, Zayan, Shet, Tet, Yod, Lamed, Nun, Semek, Ayin, Zadi, and Kof, are simple. The rule is the same amongst the Chaldeans, and, by the imitation of those above, also the letters of other tongues, and distributed to the signs, planets, and elements after their order. For the vowels in the Greek tongue answer to the 7 planets, and the other are attributed to the 12 signs of the zodiac. The 4 elements and the spirit of the world, amongst the Latins, there is the same signification of them. For the 5 vowels, A, E, I, O, U, and J and V, consonants are ascribed to the 7 planets, and the consonants B, C, D, F, G, L, M, N, P, R, S, T are answerable to the 12 signs. The rest, viz., K, Q, X, Z, make the elements. H, the aspiration, represents the spirit of the world. Y, because it is a Greek and not a Latin character, and serving only to Greek words, follows the nature of its idiom. But this you must not be ignorant of, that it is observed by all wise men that the Hebrew letters are the most efficacious of all, because they have the greatest similitude with celestials and the world, and that the letters of the other tongues have not so great an efficacy, because they are more distant from them. Now the disposition of these the following table will explain. Also, all the letters have double numbers of their order, viz., extended, which simply express of what number the letters are, according to their order, and collected, which recollect with themselves the numbers of all the preceding letters. Also, they have integral numbers, which result from the names of letters, according to their various manners of numbering. The virtues of which numbers he that shall know shall be able in every tongue to draw forth wonderful mysteries by their letters, as also to tell what things have been past, and foretell things to come. There are also other mysterious joinings of letters with numbers, but we shall abundantly discourse of all these in the following books. Wherefore we will now put an end of this first book. The table above, referred to on the following page, is from the English edition of 1651. The reader will also find a table of the Kabbalah elsewhere in this volume. At this place we insert Mr. Henry Morley's appropriate criticism on Agrippa's book of natural magic. Henry Morley's criticism. Little disguised by Hebrew admixture, and little perverted by the speculations of the Platonists of Alexandria, Philo the Jew, Plotinus, and Iamblichus whom the youngest student quotes most frequently, we have again the Attic Moses, Plato speaking through a young and strong heart to the world. Very great was the influence of Plato in this period of awakening to thought. Nothing was known by experience of nature, for little had been learnt since the time when Plato, theorizing upon nature, owned it to be impossible to arrive at any certain result in our speculations upon the creation of the visible universe and its authors. Wherefore, he said, even if we should only advance reasons not less probable than those of others, you should still be content. In this spirit alone Cornelius Agrippa taught his age. There are these marvels, well accredited, there is this cumbrous and disjointed mass of earthly, sensible experience, which there is no way of explaining left to me but one. I accept the marvels, foolish as they seem. They are as well accredited as things more obviously true. With God all things are possible. In God all things consist. I will adopt Plato's belief that the world is animated by a moving soul, and from the soul of the world I will look up to its creator. I cannot rest content with a confused mass of evidence. I will animate with my own soul, and a faith in its divine origin, the world about me. I will adopt the glorious belief of Plato, that we sit here as in a cavern, with our faces held from looking to the cavern's mouth, down which a light is streaming and pours in a flood over our heads, broken by shadows of things moving in the world above. We see the shadows on the wall, hear echoes, and believe in all as the one known truth of substance and of voice, although these are not the images of the superiors. I also will endeavor to climb up out of the cave into the land flooded with sunlight. I connect all that we see here with Plato's doctrine of superior ideas. I subdue matter to spirit. I will see true knowledge in apparent foolishness, and connect the meanest clod with its divine creator. I will seek to draw down influences, and to fill my soul with a new strength imparted by the virtue of ideas streaming from above. The superior manifest in the inferior is the law of nature manifested in the thing created. My soul is not sufficient for itself. Beyond it and above it lie eternal laws, subtle, not having substance or form, yet the cause of form and substance. I cannot hope to know them otherwise than as ideas. To unborn generations they will be revealed, perhaps. To me they are ideas, celestial influences, working intelligences. I believe in them, and I desire to lay open my soul to their more perfect apprehension. They are not God, though God created them. They are not man, though they have by divine ordainment formed him. The more I dwell upon their qualities, the more I long for the divine, the more shall I be blessed by the reception of their rays. The more intensely I yearn heavenward, the more shall I bring down heaven to dwell in my soul. So we may hear, if we will, the spirit of the young inquirer pleading to us from across the centuries. And if our own minds ever yearned for an escape from the delusions of the grosser sense, and the restrictions set by crowds on free inquiry, there is no true heart that will not say, "You labored well, my brother." Agrippa and the Rosicrucians. The secrets to be talked over between Cornelius and his friend related to that study of the mysteries of knowledge in which the Theosophists assisted one another. Secret societies, chiefly composed of curious and learned youths, had by this time become numerous, and numerous especially among the Germans. Not only the search after the philosopher's stone, which was then worthy to be prosecuted by enlightened persons, but also the new realms of thought laid open by the first glance at Greek literature, and by the still more recent introduction of a study of the Hebrew language, occupied the minds of these associated scholars. Such studies often carried those who follow them within the borders of forbidden ground, and therefore secrecy was a condition necessary to their freedom of inquiry. Towards the close of the 16th century, such associations, the foundation of which had been a desire to keep thought out fetters, were developed into the form of brotherhoods of Rosicrucians, physician, theosophist, chemist, and now, by the mercy of God, Rosicrucian, became then the style in which a brother gloried. The brotherhoods of Rosicrucians are still commonly remembered, but in the social history of Europe they are less to be considered than those first confederations of Theosophists, which nursed indeed mythical errors gathered from the Greeks and Jews, but out of whose theories there was developed much a pure spiritualism that entered into strife with what was outwardly corrupt and sensual in the body of the Roman Church, and thus prepared the way for the more vital attacks of the reformers. When first Greek studies were revived, the monks commonly regarded them as essentially adverse to Roman interests, and the very language seemed to them infected with the plague of heresy. In the Netherlands it became almost a proverb with them that to be known for a grammarian was to be reputed heretic. Not seldom, indeed, in later times, has John Reuchlin, who, for his Greek and Hebrew scholarship, was called after the manner of his day, the Phoenix of Germans, and who was the object of an ardent hero worship to men like Cornelius Agrippa, been called also the father of the Reformation. Certainly Luther, Erasmus, and Melanchthon had instruction from him. By him it was that Schwarzerd had been taught to call himself Melanchthon, and many will remember how, after his death, Erasmus, in a pleasant dialogue, raised his old friend to the rank of saint, and prayed to him, O holy soul, be favorable to the languages, be favorable to those that love honors of the languages, be propitious to the sacred tongues. But Reuchlin, for the taste of smoke in it, Reuchlin quasi-Ricci, his name was turned into the Greek form Capnio. Reuchlin, or Capnio, never passed as a reformer beyond detestation of the vices of the priesthood. Like Cornelius, who began his life before the public as a scholar by an act of homage to his genius, Reuchlin loved liberty and independence, cherished the idol of free conscience, but never fairly trusted himself to its guidance. To the last, an instinct of obedience to the church governed his actions, and the spiritual gold he could extract from Plato, Aristotle, or the wonderful Kabbalah of the Jews was in but small proportion to the dross fetched up with it from the same ancient mines. A contemporary notion of the Reformation, not without some rude significance in this respect, is said to have been obtruded upon Charles V. by a small body of unknown actors who appeared before him in 1530 when he was in Germany. He had been dining with his brother Ferdinand, and did not refuse their offer to produce a comedy in dumb show. One dressed as a scholar, labeled Capnio, brought before the emperor a bundle of sticks, some crooked and some straight, laid them down in the highway, and departed. Then entered another, who professed to represent Erasmus, looked at the sticks, shook his head, made various attempts to straighten the crooked ones, and finding that he could not do so, shook his head over them again, put them down where he had found them, and departed. Then came an actor, labeled Luther, with a torch, who set all that was crooked in the bundle blazing. When he was gone, entered one dressed as an emperor, who tried in vain to put the fire out with his sword. Last came Pope Leo X, to whom, grieving dismally over the spectacle before him, there were 2 pails brought. One contained oil, the other water. His Holiness, to quell the fire, poured over it the bucketful of oil, and while the flame attracted all eyes by the power beyond mastery with which it shot up towards the heaven, the actors made their escape undetected. Now it was over the crooked sticks of Capnio, and many other matters difficult of comprehension, that Cornelius and his confederates were bent in curious and anxious study. The bearer of the letters, said Landulf, in excusing himself on the plea of illness from a winter journey to a friend at Avignon. The bearer of these letters is a German native of Nuremberg, but dwelling at Lyons, and he is a curious inquirer after hidden mysteries, a free man restrained by no fetters, who impelled by I know not what rumor concerning you, desires to sound your depths. That the man himself might be sounded as one likely to have knowledge of some important things, and that if it seemed fit, he should be made a member of their brotherhood, was the rest of the recommendation of the person by Landulf to his friend Agrippa. At Lyons were assembled many members of his league, awaiting the arrival of the young soldier philosopher. His early taste for an inquiry into mysteries had caused him to take all possible advantage as a scholar of each change of place and each extension of acquaintance among learned men who were possessors of rare books. He had searched every accessible volume that might help him in the prosecution of the studies that had then a fascination, not for him only, but for not a few of the acutest minds in Christendom. At that time there was, in the modern sense, no natural science, the naturalists of ancient Greece and Rome being the sole authorities in whom the learned could put trust. Of the miraculous properties of plants and animals and parts of animals, even at the close of the 16th century, careful and sober men placed as accepted knowledge many extravagant ideas on record. At the beginning of the century, when a belief in the influences of the stars, in the interferences of demons, and in the most wonderful properties of bodies was the rule among learned and unlearned, Luther himself not excluded from the number, an attempt to collect the group, if it might be according to some system, the most recondite secrets of what passed for the divine ordering of nature, was in no man's opinion foolish, though in the opinion of the greater number criminal. Belief in the mysteries of magic, not want of belief, caused men to regard with enmity and dread researchers into secrets that might give to those by whom they were discovered subtle and superhuman power, through possessing which they would acquire an influence, horrible to suspect, over their fellow creatures. Detaching their search into the mysteries of the universe from all fear of this kind, the members of such secret societies as that to which Cornelius belonged gathered whatever fruit they could from the forbidden tree and obtained mutual benefit by frank exchange of information. Cornelius had already, by incessant search, collected notes for a complete treatise upon magic, and of these not a few were obtained from Reuchlin's Hebrew Christian way of using the Kabbalah. From Avignon, after a short stay, Cornelius Agrippa went to Lyons, and remaining there some weeks, compared progress with his friends, and no doubt also formally divested himself of any further responsibility connected with the Spanish enterprise. Towards the end of this year, a friend at Cologne, Theodoric, Bishop of Cyrene, wrote expressing admiration of him, as of one among so many thousand Germans, who at sundry times and places had displayed in equal degree power to labor vigorously as a man at arms as well as man of letters. Who does not know, the bishop asks, how few of many thousands have done that? He envies those who can thus earn the wreath of Mars without losing the favor of Minerva, and calls the youth in arms a man, in scholarship a teacher. To escape the soldier's life of bondage seems to be now the ambition of the scholar. With the world before him, in the 23rd year of his age, well born, distinguished among all who knew him, for the rare extent of his attainments, Cornelius, attended by his servant, Stephen, quitted his friends at Lyons, and rode to Othune, where he was received in the abbey of a liberal and hospitable man, physician, theologian, and knight by turns, M. Champier, who, having been born at St. Symphorien-le-Château, near Lyons, was called Symphorianus Champier, or Campigius, and who, not content with his own noble ancestry, assigned himself by right of the Campegius to the family of the Campeggi of Bologna, and assumed its arms. He studied at Paris, Litera Humaniora, at Montpellier medicine, and practiced at Lyons. He lived to obtain great fame, deserving title, and losing after his death all. It was not until 5 years after this visit from Cornelius Agrippa that Symphorianus, acting as body physician to the Duke of Lorraine, was knighted on the battlefield of Marignano. Among his writings, those which most testify his sympathy with the inquiries of Cornelius are a book on the miracles of Scripture, a life of Arnold Villeneuve, and a French version of Sibylline oracles. This Champier then sympathized with the enthusiasm of the young theosophist, and under his roof, and the first venture of Cornelius, before the world of letters seems to have been planned. in the last week of May, we find that he was sent Stephen to fetch debris from Dole, was summoned Antonius Xanthus from Nivern, and wishes, in association with Symphorianus, to arrange a meeting with Landulf at any convenient place and time. He has something in hand concerning which he wishes to take counsel with his comrades. A few days afterwards, he and Landulf are at Dole together, and while Cornelius has left Dole for a short time to go to Chalon, sur Saône, his friend sends word to him that he has engaged on his behalf the interest of the Archbishop of Besancon, Anthony I. Probably not an old man, since he was alive 30 years afterwards, who desires greatly to see him, and boasts that he can give information of some things unknown perhaps even to him. The archbishop is impatient to see the person who has stored up from rare books, even those written in Greek and Hebrew, so great a number of the secrets of the universe. Landulf, to content him, antedates the time appointed for his friend's return, and while reporting this, adds that there are many at Dole loud in the praise of Cornelius, and none louder than himself. The influence of his associates is evidently at work on his behalf among the magnates of the town and university of Dole, and learned men in the adjoining towns of Burgundy. For it is at Dole that he has resolved to make his first public appearance as a scholar by expounding in a series of orations Reuchlin's book on the mirific word. At Chalon, however, Cornelius fell sick of a summer pestilence, from which he was recovering on the 8th of July. As soon as health permitted, he returned to Dole, where there was prepared for him a cordial reception. Dole is a pretty little town, and at that time was possessed university, which was removed in after years to Besancon. Its canton was called, for its beauty and fertility, the Val d'Amour, and when Besancon was independent of the lords of Burgundy, Dole was their capital. A pleasant miniature capital, with not 4,000 inhabitants, a parliament, a university, a church of Notre Dame, whereof the tower could be seen from distant fields, a princely residence. Dole et Joyeux, they called it, until 30 years before Cornelius Agrippa declaimed his orations there. But after it had been, in 1479, captured and despoiled by a French army, it was called Dole la Dolente. Mistress of Dole in Burgundy was Maximilian's daughter, Margaret of Austria, who, in this year of Agrippa's life, was 29 years old. She was already twice a widow. When affianced twice, once vainly to France, a second time to Spain, and likely to perish in a tempest before reaching her appointed husband, she had wit to write a clever epitaph upon herself. Her Spanish husband died almost after the first embrace, and she had since, after 4 years of wedded happiness, lost her true husband, Philibert of Savoy. She was 24 years old when that happened, and resolved to make an end of marrying. In 1506, after the death of Archduke Philip, her father Maximilian, being guardian of his grandson Charles V, made Margaret his governor over the Netherlands, and appointed her to rule over Burgundy and the Charolais. Thus she came to be, in the year 1509, mistress at Dole, a clever, lively woman, opposed strongly to France, and always mindful of the interests of the House of Austria, to which the family of young Agrippa was attached. Margaret was well known for her patronage of letters and her bounty towards learned men. It would be, therefore, a pleasant transfer of his loyalty, Agrippa thought, from Maximilian to Margaret, if he could thereby get rid of what he regarded as camp slavery under the one, and earn the favor of the other in the academic grove. To earn Margaret's goodwill, and help upon the royal road to fortune, was one main object of Cornelius when he announced at Dole that he proposed to expound Reuchlin's book on the mirific word in orations, to which, insomuch as they were to be delivered in honor of the most serene Princess Margaret, the whole public would have gratuitous admission. Poor youth! He could not possibly have made a more genuine and honest effort, or one less proper to be used by evil men for the damnation of his character. Margaret was the princess to whom, of all others, he was able to pay unaffected homage, and Reuchlin, then the boast of Germans, was the scholar of whom before every other he, a German youth, might choose to hold discourse to the Burgundians. Of Reuchlin, Aegidius, chief of the Austin friars, wrote that he had blessed him and all mortals by his works. Philip Beroaldus the younger wrote to him, Pope Leo X has read your Pythagorean book, as he reads all good books greedily. Then it was read by the Cardinal de Medici, and I am expecting next to have my turn. This book, which had been read by the Pope himself with a eager pleasure, was a wonder of the day, and was in the most perfect unison with the whole tone of Agrippa's mind. He really understood it deeply. It was most dear to him as a theosophist, and he was not to be blamed if he felt, also, that of all books in the world there was none of which the exposition would so fully serve his purpose of displaying the extent and depth of his own store and knowledge. Exposition of the Kabbalah. Mainly upon what was said and written by Cornelius Agrippa in this 23rd year of his age has been founded the defamation by which, when he lived, his spirit was tormented, and the hope of his existence miserably frustrated, by which, now that he is dead, his character comes down to us defiled. This victim, at least, has not escaped the vengeance of the monks, and his crime was that he studied vigorously, in his salad days, those curiosities of learning into which, at the same time, popes, bishops, and philosophers, mature of years, inquired with equal faith, and almost equal relish, but less energy or courage. For a clear understanding of the ground, and of the perils of the ground, now taken by Cornelius Agrippa, little more is necessary than a clear notion of what was signified by Reuchlin's book on the mirific word. But what was to be said of Reuchlin and his book, as well as of other matters that will hereafter concern the fortunes of Cornelius, requires some previous attention to a subject pretty well forgotten in these days of a people rich in other knowledge. We must recall, in fact, some of the main points of the Kabbalah. This account of the Kabbalah is derived from German sources, among which the chief are Brucker's Historia Philosphy and the Kabbalah Denudata, a collection of old Kabbalistical writings arranged and explained by Christian Knorr von Rosenroth. The traditions, or Kabbalah of the Jews, are contained in sundry books written by Hebrew rabbis, and consist of a strange mixture of fable and philosophy, varying on a good many points, but all adhering with sufficient accuracy to the scheme of doctrine. They claim high and remote origin. Some say that the first Kabbalah were received by Adam from the angel Raziel, who gave him, either while he yet remained in paradise, or else at the time of his expulsion, to console and help him, a book full of divine wisdom. In this book were the secrets of nature, and by knowledge of them Adam entered into conversation with the sun and moon, knew how to summon good and evil spirits, to interpret dreams, foretell events, to heal and to destroy. This book, handed down from father to son, came into Solomon's possession, and by its aid Solomon became master of many potent secrets. A Kabbalistic volume, called the Book of Raziel, was, in the Middle Ages, sometimes to be seen among the Jews. Another account said that the first Kabbalistic book was the Sefer Jezirah, written by Abraham, but the most prevalent opinion was that when the written law was given on Mount Sinai to Moses, the Kabbalah, or mysterious interpretation of it, was taught to him also. Then Moses, it was said, when he descended from the mountain, entered Aaron's tent, and taught him also the secret powers of the written word. And Aaron, having been instructed, placed himself at the right hand of Moses, and stood by while his sons, Elzor and Ithamar, who had been called into the tent, received the same instruction. On the right and left of Moses and Aaron then sat Ithamar and Eleazar. When the 70 elders of the Sanhedrim were called in and taught the hidden knowledge, the elders finally were seated, that they might be present when all those among the common people who desired to learn came to be told those mysteries. Thus the elect of the common people heard but once what the Sanhedrim heard twice. The sons of Aaron 3 times, and Aaron 4 times repeated of the secrets that had been made known to Moses by the voice of the Most High. Of this mystical interpretation of the scripture, no person set down any account in writing, unless it was Esdras. But some Jews doubt whether he did. Israelites kept the knowledge of the doctrine by a pure tradition, but about 50 years after the destruction of Jerusalem, Agrippa, a great rabbi, wrote the chief part of it in that book, Sefer Jazira, or the Book of the Creation, which was foolishly ascribed by a few to Abraham. A disciple of the rabbi Agrippa was Rabbi Simeon ben Jokai, who wrote more of the tradition in the book called Zohar. The truth probably is that the literature of Kabbalism, which is full of suggestion, derived from the Neoplatonics of Alexandria, began with the Jews of Alexandria under the first Ptolemies. In the book of Simeon ben Shatak, it went to Palestine, where it at first was little heeded, but after the destruction of Jerusalem, it gained importance, and then rabbis Agrippa and Simeon ben Jokai extended it. It is indisputable that Aristotle had been studied by the writer of the Sefer Jazira, the oldest known book of the Kabbalists. The Kabbalah went afterwards with other learning to Spain, and that part of it, at least, which deals with Hebrew anagrams, cannot be traced to a time earlier than the 11th century. Many rabbis, Abraham ben David, Saudia, Moses Botril, Moses bar Nachman, Eleazar of Garmiza, and others, have written Hebrew books for the purpose of interpreting the system of the Kabbalah. But it was, perhaps, not before the 8th century that it had come to receive very general attention from the Jews. The Kabbalah consisted of two portions, the symbolical and the real. The symbolical Kabbalah being the means by which the doctrines of the real Kabbalah were elicited. In the Hebrew text of the Scriptures, it was said, there is not only an evident, but there is also a latent meaning, and in its latent meaning are contained the mysteries of God and of the universe. It need scarcely be said that a belief in secret wisdom has for ages been inherent in the Oriental mind, and in the Scriptures it was reasoned by the later Jews, all wisdom must be of necessity contained. Of divine authorship, they cannot be like ordinary works of men, but if they were taken only in the natural sense, might it not be said that many human works contain marvels not less surprising, and morality as pure? No, it was said, as we have entertained angels and regarded them as men, so we may entertain the words of the Most High, if we regard only their apparent sense, and not their spiritual mystery. And so it was that through a blind excess of reverence and inspired writings were put to superstitious use. The modes of examining their letters, words, and sentences for hidden meaning, in which wholly consisted the symbolical Kabbalah, were three, and these were called gematria, notarikon, themura. Gematria was arithmetical when it consisted in applying to the Hebrew letters of a word the sense they bore as numbers, letters being used also for figures in the Hebrew as in the Greek. Then the letters in a word being taken as numbers and added up, it was considered that another word, of which the letters added up came to an equal sum, might fairly be substituted by the arithmetical gematria. Figurative gematria deduce mysterious interpretations from the shapes of letters used in sacred writing. Thus, in numbers X, 35, Beth means the reversal of enemies. This kind of interpretation was known also by the name of Zura. Architectonic gematria constructed words from the numbers given by Scripture when describing the measurements of buildings as the ark or temple. By notarikon, more words were developed from the letters of a word, as if it had consisted of so many abbreviations, or else first and last letters of words, or the first letters of successive words, were detached from their places and put side by side. By themura, any word might be made to yield a mystery out of its anagram. These sacred anagrams were known as zarif. By the same branch of the symbolical Kabbalah, three systems were furnished, in accordance with which words might be transformed by the substitution of one letter for another. The first of the systems, album, arranged the letters of the alphabet in two rows, one below another. The second, athbath, gave another couple of rows, and third, athbach, arranged them by pairs in 3 rows. all the pairs in the first row being the numerical value 10, in the second row 100, in the third 1,000. Any one of these forms might be consulted, and any letter in a word exchanged for another standing either in album, athbath, or athbach, immediately above it or below it, or on the right hand of it or the left. This was the symbolical Kabbalah, and the business of it was to extract, by any of the means allowed, the hidden meaning of the scriptures. The real Kabbalah was the doctrine in this way elicited. It was theoretical, explaining divine qualities, the 10 Sephiroth, the fourfold Kabbalistical worlds, the 32 footprints of wisdom, the 50 doors of prudence, Adam Kadmon, etc. Or it was practical, explaining how to use such knowledge for the calling of spirits, the extinguishing of fires, the banishing of disease, and so forth. The theoretical Kabbalah contained, it was said by Christian students, many references to the Messiah. Its main points were 1. The tree, 2. The chariot of Ezekiel, 3. The work of creation, 4. The Ancient of Days, mentioned in Daniel. It concerns us most to understand the tree. The chariot of Ezekiel, or Messiah Merkaba, was a description of prefigurements concerning ceremonial and judicial law. The doctrine of creation in the book Levishith was a dissertation upon physics. The Ancient of Days created of God and the Messiah in a way so mystical that Kabbalists generally declined to ascribe any meaning at all to the direct sense of the words employed. Of these things we need say no more, but of the Kabbalistical tree it will be a requisite to speak in more detail. It was an arrangement of the 10 Sephiroth. The word Sephiroth is derived by some rabbis from a word meaning to count, because they are a counting of the divine excellence. Otherwise, it is considered an adaptation of the Greek word sphere, because it represents the spheres of the universe, which are successive emanations from the deity. In the beginning was Or Hainsof, the eternal light, from whose brightness there descended a ray through the firstborn of God, Adam Kadmon, and presently, departing from its straight course, ran in a circle, and so formed the first of the Sephiroth, which was called Kephai, or the crown, because superior to all the rest. Having formed this circle, the ray resumed its straight course, till it again ran in a circle to produce the second of the 10 Sephiroth, Kokma, wisdom, because wisdom is the source of all. The same ray of divine light passed on, losing gradually, as it became more distant from its holy source, some of its power, and formed presently, in like manner, the third of the Sephiroth, called Bina, or understanding, because understanding is the channel through which wisdom flows to things below. The origin of human knowledge. The fourth of the Sephiroth is called Jadola, or Chesed, greatness or goodness, because God, as being great and good, created all things. The fifth is Jeberah, strength, because it is by strength that he maintains them, and because strength is the only source of justice in the world. The sixth of the Sephiroth, Thbirth, beauty or grace, unites the qualities of the preceding. The four last of the Sephiroth are successively named Nazak, victory, Hod, honor, Jasad, or Shalom, the foundation, or peace, and finally, Malkuth, the kingdom. Each of the 10 has also a divine name, and their divine names, written in the same order, are Je, Jah, Jehovah, pronounced Elohim, Eloah, Elohim, Jehovah, pronounced as usual, Lord Sabaoth, Jehovah Zeboeth, Lord Sabbath, Jehovah Zebeth, Elkai, the living God, Adonai, the Lord. By these circles our world is surrounded and weakened in its passage through them, but able to bring down with its powers, that are the character of each, divine light reaches us. These Sephiroth, arranged in a peculiar manner, form the tree of the Kabbalists. They are also sometimes arranged in the form of a man, Adam Kadmon, according to the idea of the Neoplatonics, that the figure of the world was that of a man's body. In accordance with another view derived from the same school, things in this world were supposed to be gross images of things above. Matter was said by the Kabbalists to have been formed by the withdrawal of the divine ray, by the emanation of which from the first source it was produced. Everything created was created by an emanation from the source of all, and that which being most distant contains least of the divine essence is capable of gradual purification, so that even the evil spirits will in course of time become holy and pure, and be assimilated to the brightest of the emanations from or Ein Sof. God, it was said, is all in all, everything is part of the divine essence, with a growing or perceptive or reflective power, one or all, and by that which has one, all may be acquired. A stone may become a plant a beast a man an angel a creator. This kind of belief, which was derived also from the Alexandrian Platonists, led to the spiritual Kabbalism by which such Christians as Reuchlin and Agrippa profited. It connected them by a strong link with the divine essence, and they, feeling perhaps more distinctly than their neighbors that they were partakers of the divine nature, and might, by striving after purity of soul and body, win their way to a state of spiritual happiness and power, cut themselves off from all communion with the sensuality that had become the scandal of the Church of Rome, and keenly perceived, as they expressed strongly, their sense of the degraded habits of the priests. It was in this way that the Christian Kabbalists assisted in the labors of the Reformation. Little more has to be said about their theory, and that relates to the Kabbalistic worlds. These were placed in the four spaces between the upper Sephiroth. Between the first and second was placed Azalith, the outflow of which contained the purest beings, the producers of the rest. Between the second and third Sephiroth was the world Bria, or the thrones containing spirits less pure, but still not material. They were classed into wheels, lightnings, lions, burning spirits, angels, children of God, cherubim. Their prince was called Metatron. The world in the next interspace, called Jezra, angels approached more nearly to a material form, and the fourth, Asia, was made wholly material. From this point, density increases till our world is reached. Azaya is the abode of the Qliphoth, or material spirits striving against God. They travel through the air, their bodies are of dense air, incorruptible, and they have power to work in the material world. The Ketoriel, Adam Belial, Esau, Aganiel, Usiel, Ogiel, Tomiel, Thumiel. For captains, they fight in two armies, under their chiefs Zamiel and Lilith. Their enemies are the angels who contend against them, with two armies led by Metatron and Sandalphon. Lilith is the begetter of the powers striving against light. The nature of man's soul, said Kabbalists, is threefold: vegetative, perceptive, intellectual, each embracing each. It emanates from the upper Sephiroth, is composed of the pure elements, for the four elements, either in their pure and spiritual or their gross form, enter into all things, is expansive, separates after death, so that the parts return each to its own place, but reunite to praise God on the Sabbaths and new moons. With each soul are sent into the world a guardian and an accusing angel. Note: Mr. Morley's excellent summary of the Kabbalah Denudata may be regarded as fully authentic, although he writes from the standpoint of an unbeliever. The tree of the Kabbalah, divided into 3 plates to facilitate comparison, by Dr. Pancoast, gives the most modern rendition of the Kabbalah. We introduce, on the 2 following pages, a newly arranged table of the Kabbalah, Hebrew letters, renderings in English letters, symbols, tarot emblems, etc. This table is the plainest in its terms of all others. Following the table, the Kabbalah is continued under the title, The Mirific Word. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Midwest Coven Cast Presents Weekend Reads. Join me next week for the next installment as we continue through Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy or magic. For more information about Midwest Coven Cast, you can visit our website at midwestcovencast.com. You can also follow us on social media at Midwest Coven Cast on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, or at Midwest Coven on Twitter. We hope to see you there. Until next time, Coven, blessed be.